Hi everybody, welcome back to Leading Edge. My name is Tim Schneider with Aegis Learning. And first and foremost, thank you all for the very, very good comments and kind comments about our recently completed series about toxic compromises. We've actually had a couple of requests for keynotes and some training associated with that series, so that's been absolutely great. Now today we're going to start a brand new series about our DiSC. Understanding our DiSC assessment and what that means for us. And starting off, we're going to begin with some DiSC fundamentals, going to move into preferred environments and general characteristics, and then we're going to talk about some finer points about communication, dealing with conflict, and even about how we make decisions. So I hope you enjoy this upcoming series, and I look forward to laying this out with you. So hold on, here comes the first part. So DiSC is a behavioral assessment tool that allows us some greater insight and greater depth in understanding who we are and the behavior of others. First of all, DiSC is an acronym. It stands for D for dominance, I for influence, S for steadiness, and C for conscientiousness. All of us have a primary driving behavioral style or approach, and many of us, probably well over half, have a secondary influence that creeps into that as well. So for our purpose, we're going to be looking and focusing on those primary styles, but if you have that secondary influence, you're also going to want to look at the characteristics associated with that. Now, a couple of other things, a couple of other foundational elements of DiSC. DiSC is based on an old piece of science called Marston's model of behavior. William Marston was a leading behavioral scientist that pioneered this approach. Originally, he had 3 archetypes and then later split that into 4. And this assessment, the one that we use, the Everything DiSC Workplace, has been taken by over 30 million people and has an incredible degree of predictive accuracy. Somewhere in the low to mid 90 percentile of accuracy associated with it if you answer the questions correctly. Now, the reason it has such a high degree of accuracy is because it uses something called adaptive testing. Adaptive testing is an algorithmic function that compares your answers. So, for example, on one answer, you say, I really enjoy working with people, and then a few answers later, you say, I really like working by myself. The algorithm says, hey, it probably doesn't say hey, but it says, hey, that doesn't fit. So it feeds more questions until it reaches that minimum level of predictive accuracy to be considered a valid psychometric tool. Now, again, this focuses on our behavior. So if you've ever taken something like the Myers-Briggs, the MBTI, that is it's a valid psychometric tool, but it looks at different things. It looks at situational and attitudinal-based approaches, while the DiSC is focused purely on our own behavior. Now, one final foundational element for us, and that is the purpose and kind of our learning journey here. So there are 3 steps to this that are very important. The first one is about understanding. Understanding you, that's almost kind of the easy part. And then paying special attention to the other styles and learning about others. Because whether you're talking about your family dynamic or whether you're talking about a workplace dynamic, you are going to be surrounded by those other styles. Learning what makes them tick is kind of the magic of the DiSC assessment. The second key learning element for us is about learning something about empathy and not being dismissively empathetic. Now, here's what I mean by that. We humans are very judgmental creatures. We recognize when somebody talks differently than us. We recognize when somebody makes decisions differently than us. We recognize when people deal in conflict differently than us. And oftentimes, automatically, we go to, in our mind, and therefore, because it's different, it must be wrong. And boy, I tell you what, that creates a lot of issues. And what I'd like you to do is, we're going to continue to acknowledge and note those differences, but the empathy comes in and says, and you know what? It's okay. She talks differently than I do, and that's okay. He makes decisions differently than I do, and you know what? That is absolutely okay. They're wired differently than I am, and you know what? That's absolutely okay. That is that non-condemning, non-dismissive empathy piece. And then the third and final part is really kind of an interesting one. We'll spend quite a bit of time talking about that in our time together. And that is about adapting and chameleoning. Adapting and chameleoning is about, hey, I know who I am, and now I've done a pretty good job of, kind of figuring out and understanding who you are. Now I'm going to take a couple of steps towards you. I'm never going to quite fully be who you are behaviorally, but if I can just get a few steps closer, that's going to make a lot better, stronger, more valuable connections for us. So in the coming episodes, we're going to be talking about communication and a few other things. Thank you very much, and I look forward to the next installments together.